So Russia is not going to budge, and neither will NATO. We're back to square one then, with very little progress being made. How do we view this turn of events? What's the mood like in the capital shaping this conflict? To discuss this and more, I'm joined by my colleagues, WION correspondents Julia Chapman from Moscow, Simon Marks from Washington, D.C., and Ollie Barrett from London. Hello to all of you from Kiev. Julia, Russia has dismissed reports that Macron and Putin agreed on de-escalation. What do you make of these statements?
President Macron came to Russia with quite a lot of confidence that he could secure a deal from President Vladimir Putin. And although none was announced at the end of their press conference following more than 5 hours of talks, French officials were briefing yesterday that some commitment had been made. The Kremlin has dismissed that. It has said that there was no promise given to the French president. And indeed, even if there were any arrangements that had tentatively been made, they weren't up to the French president to deal with. He had to go back to his allies to consult on all of the subjects that he discussed with President Vladimir Putin, and Russia was very insistent that it sees NATO as being led by the United States, not by France. So it wants to continue negotiating directly with Washington. That's a process that's been going on for many weeks now. Russia is still trying to engage on these security demands that it has for European security infrastructure, and those discussions are still continuing.
Simon Marks, are there concerns in Washington, D.C. that while its allies are busy talking and pushing for diplomacy, Vladimir Putin is only bolstering his forces?
There is a growing realization here in Washington, D.C. that, as the New York Times puts it today, Vladimir Putin is digging in and that the Biden administration is going to have to be prepared for a long slog in the weeks and possibly months ahead. The French President Emmanuel Macron saying while he was in Kiev that the world may not know whether his shuttle diplomacy this week has succeeded for weeks or possibly months. Now, the White House was notably lukewarm about some of that shuttle diplomacy. Here on Tuesday, White House officials said they would welcome any kind of diplomatic breakthrough that the French president was able to achieve in efforts to defuse the crisis. But essentially, they'll only believe there's been one when they actually see it.
Ollie, the British Prime Minister will be visiting Poland. Ahead of this visit, he has urged allies to finalise heavy economic sanctions against Russia. What is Boris Johnson up to?
Well, Boris Johnson is trying to show continued support for allies in Eastern Europe. That's part of the reason for his trip to Poland, with which the UK has an increasingly good relationship, actually. Boris Johnson also visiting NATO in Brussels. He'll hold talks with the NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg. They'll hold a joint press conference on Thursday as well. And that's also Boris Johnson trying to show UK support behind the NATO military alliance in the face of what is perceived by many as Russian aggression towards Ukraine and that potential for an invasion, which of course Russia denies it is planning. And this is just the latest in the British diplomatic flurry to try and show, as I say, support for the region, support for NATO, the possibility of deploying further resources to the Eastern European region.
Julia, Simon, Ollie, thanks very much for those updates.